Alright guys, I decided I'm going to get this valve body all put back together, leave the pump set aside for a second. Main reason why is I want to get some of these small parts off my bench here. But so one of the things whenever you're looking at these valve bodies is you want to make sure that all of these valves press and release without any issues, and look all around for damage. Since there's no damage on these, I'm going to go ahead and reuse them. Also, a lot of times the O-rings like to sit down in here. Always inspect these O-rings. They can get damaged. It's not likely, but they can. Also, the other side of the valve body here is where the other valves go in. Also look down in here, and all these O-rings in here look fine, but be sure to look at them. And then also down in here, this is where the piston rides down in. So you want to make sure that all these packing in here are not ripped or anything. And if you're wondering why I'm not replacing them right now, keep in mind this is external to the pump. So if something goes wrong here, it's relatively easy to fix, you know, because it's only these, what is there, 8 bolts here, and this whole valve body comes off the pressure washer. So that's part of the reason why. So I usually just, you know, check for damage or wear and all that stuff. And since they don't look bad, I'm going to go ahead and leave them alone, and we're going to just put this back together. So with that said, these are relatively easy. These just drop down in. They go right up against those O-rings that are down in there. So you just drop them in like that. Just like that. And then also on these guys, make sure that the O-rings are good on these as well. And then that's pretty much it. You just drop these guys back, or put these guys back in. All right, then same thing with this side. Drop the valves right down in there. Make sure they sit down in there right. I usually use a pick, you know, and get them to sit down where they should. And then the same thing. Put all your caps on. Alright, so once that's all together, you can go ahead and put the unloader and stuff on. So one of the things I wanted to make sure you knew is almost on every pressure washer, there is a screen that sits down inside here. Make sure that that screen is clean. I already took and hosed it out, blew it out and everything, so it's good and clean. And then all this guy does is just sits right down in there, just like that. You can just push him down in with your finger. All right, so in most pressure washers too, they're marked with in and out, so you kind of know how everything is. So this basically goes on just like that. And this sits just like that. Make sure the O-rings here are the same thing. Make sure they're in good shape and put them on. And there you go. Now it's right. And then you just tighten these guys up. I usually always tighten these guys down evenly too. You don't want to cause a bind in this anywhere. These unloaders are, like I said, they're about $60, $70, so you want to be somewhat careful with them. But then after that, same thing, just snug them up or get them tightened up. And they don't have to be crazy tight. Remember, the O-rings are there, so as long as it's not leaking, you're fine. Oop, messed up my table here. But that's pretty much it to this valve body. So here's all the bolts and stuff that go to it. So we're going to go ahead and just set these in here, and we're going to set this aside, and we'll start assembling the pump here. All right, guys, so here's the main pump housing. Everything is cleaned up. We're ready to go. So one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to push all these new seals down in here. So there's 3 seals for each piston here. And it's relatively simple. You know, we're just going to drop them down in and then just use a socket and just push them right down in. And that's it. I mean, it don't take much force to push these guys in. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start assembling the crank and the rods and stuff. So I got all my new bearings here. Here's all the new seals. I'm going to set this aside for a minute. So the bearings, I actually ended up ordering them from McMaster Car. So there's the bag there. But the part number on this bearing is it's a 6304. So this bearing is a precision bearing, and then this is the needle bearing that's on the other side, and it's a Torrington. It's an HK 4516. So that's the 2 bearings there. Like I said, I ordered them from McMaster. It took a day or 2 to get here because they didn't have the one in stock. It came from a different warehouse. It was the needle bearing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up this way. And one of the things you should always do is add oil to everything you assemble. Never assemble anything dry. So, and that's where I said I got this oil. It's that it's actually meant for pressure washers here. It was at the local hardware store, so it was relatively cheap. I think it was like $4. You can use SA830. A lot of people do that. I figured for $4, I mean, jug oil, SA830 is about that anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill the cap of this oil here, and we're going to get all these pistons and everything installed. So this is the crank side or the engine side. So this is going to go in just like this. And I don't know if you remember how we took this apart. I didn't really show a lot of that, but it's actually kind of a pain. So because you have to push everything together almost in unison, otherwise you can bind some of the stuff here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little dab of oil on these guys. And this is number 2, so we're going to set him right there. This one's number 1. And this is number 3. And also, you know, I should have done that to these too, but you know, put a little bit of oil down inside these, and then I'm going to put it on the crank too. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to work. Actually, it didn't go all the way in, so we're going to push these pistons in a little bit. It has to go up on that seal that we just pushed, those seals we just pushed in. So just like that. So now, and this is where it's kind of a little bit difficult, trying to figure out a way to set this. So you have to work each journal basically in just like that. So it's kind of a a little bit of a pain to get everything to line up and get it in there. All right, so now once you get that all lined up, now we're going to go ahead and push our bearings in on both sides. And the same thing, don't install these dry. So especially this needle bearing, you know, we're going to take just oil, put some up inside there. And then this guy goes on this end. And this we can actually get into it whenever we get there, so we don't have to go crazy with it. But and then he goes in on this end. So next we'll go over to the press and we'll push everything together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to push that needle bearing in first. And you know, you got to be careful again. Make sure none of these are binding in here. Since we're only pushing on the needle, we should be fine. But always keep that in mind, because if you break one of these rods, it's game over. And then we just flip it over, push the bearing in from the other side. Just like that. All right, so sorry I didn't get to show you all the pressing the bearing in. They're kind of a pain. I ended up making this little jig to push it in with, and you can see it almost touches, and that was on purpose to make sure it's seated on the bottom properly. And then on this side, I actually had a piece of exhaust tubing. It's a stainless exhaust tubing that I used to press on. So it worked out really well. So once you get that all done, the next thing you need to do is get all these snap rings put in. So there's one on each side. So this guy goes right down in there, just like that. And this guy here goes on the shaft. And yeah, he snapped right in. So that's good. I always make sure that they snap in the whole way, because sometimes you can have problems like that. But then after that, we put our seals in. So this guy actually has a snap ring on this end as well, which the paperwork that I have does not show a snap ring there. It shows this other weird clip. So I'm not sure what happened here, but nevertheless, I don't see any reason you can't put a snap ring in here. Just like that. So there we have it. That's always something to check, is make sure everything moves free, which it does. So let's start putting the seals in. All right, remember what I said earlier about oil in this bearing here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of oil in here. It won't hurt sitting this like this. It'll just run down in the bottom down there. But then after that is we can push our new seal in, and we'll just use the same tool that I made, and with a rubber mallet, and just, it shouldn't take much to seat it here. I think it feels like it stopped, so right there it is. Yep, it's about all the farther down it went. Whenever I took the old one out, that's about all the farther it was. So that's pretty much it on that one. And you know, we're going to do the same thing with this side here. Is actually me putting that oil in there, there's some oil dripping out. So I think we'll still go ahead and add just a little bit of oil on that bearing. This needle bearing here doesn't get a ton of oil. And we'll just rotate it a few times here. So then after that, we just, since we got a little bit of oil on there, this should go on pretty easy. Just like that. And then we'll just use this piece of tubing here. get it started, and then we'll just flip this over and just wanted to walk it around and make sure it did seat, which it feels like it did. So all right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this O-ring on. I already went ahead and installed the drain plug. I did add some oil down in there just because, but this is just a big O-ring. It goes over top here, just like that. And what's nice about this, it does not matter which way this guy goes on, because if you look, fill level right there, it's reverse, so you can put it on either way. And then it's just these 6 screws here. And I was just going to mention too is make sure you tighten these a little bit each time. You don't want to smash that O-ring in the wrong spot there, so just tighten it down evenly. All right, with that on there, there is nothing stopping us from go ahead and putting oil in this. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and put some oil in this now. And if I remember right, it takes pretty much all of this oil. And it does. It takes this whole quart, or this whole jug. Because it just showed it in the sight glass here, and it's just a hair above, but I'm not sitting level, so. All right, so let's put our cap on. Let's go ahead and wipe it down a little bit here, and next thing we're going to do is get our pistons installed. So the pistons are relatively simple too. What we're going to do is just same thing, put a little bit of oil on these O-rings, and then we'll start putting the pistons on. All right, and remember these shims that went on there. Put these guys on first, just like that, and then we can put the pistons on. Just like that. Then there was these copper washers that went on the top. Just like that. And then our 3 bolts, or 3 nuts. And I don't know if you noticed, but keep in mind, if you do this, if you lose one of these nuts, make sure you get the right ones. I don't know if you can see, but see how they're rounded over? That's so that they actually clear the cylinder wall. So make sure you pay attention to that. Unless you have a lathe, you can knock the ends off. And these don't get very tight, because you can crack these. These are ceramic. And that's it. All right, next we're ready to install the valve body. And there you go. You can see how it works. All right, guys. Next thing to do is get our valve body on here, and I did lube up these pistons here with a little bit of oil too, and then just slide it on. All right, guys. So with that said, the only other thing I got to put on is this right here. So why not get all this put together, and then let's go outside and turn her on and see how she works. All right, folks. Well, here we have everything back together. So here was the oil that we used, and then the seal kit. And this came from Hydrobase. The part number is ZX0883. It says Dolly Kit A2787, oil seals for the Annovi Reverberi pressure washer, the XM series. That's what this here is. And then, like I said, the bearings that I got came from McMaster Car. So with that said, I already did test it. Everything seems to work out fine. And one of the things I did want to point out is whenever you get a pressure washer back together like this, you should check the output pressure on this. And what you do is you put a pressure gauge in series with this, and then you adjust the pressure. That way the max pressure on this, since this is an adjustable pressure regulator on this, is what the pressure washer says, or what the pump actually says. So with that said, I brought my gravy lay out here to try it out and kind of show you. So let's get on it. Well, it sounds like I'm running out of gas. Well, with that said, guys, you can see everything works. It looks like I'm running out of some gas, so I'm going to go fill up and finish up pressure washing. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, take care.